Sorry, I'm working today because life got a little crazy with my kiddo, so I'm kind of casual in
No
my
worries. Same. I'm just at school. So I
Okay.
just have seven interview questions for you.
Okay.
Some of which we've kind of talked about before, but um I'm in a health promotion class right now, and a lot of it is just like career exploration and kind of figuring out what we want to do in the future. And they want us to interview someone um in the public health field. And I was like, oh, Leah would be a great person for
Okay.
this.
Sounds
So
great.
the first question is, what advice would you give someone in my place, an undergraduate public health major?
What advice with regards to
I think just in general, like if you were to
like
tell your past self, obviously I remember you didn't study public health, but like if you were to give advice to your undergraduate self, what would it be?
as far as like career next steps, that kind of thing? Is that what you're
Yeah.
thinking? Okay. Um, oh gosh, so many things. So one thing I always think about that's really helped me a lot is to just trust what I'm passionate about, even if it doesn't quite make sense, even if your brain can't quite pull together, this is what I'm passionate about, therefore my career path should be ABC. Don't worry about that. Just keep, I mean, you've probably heard it almost sounds cliche, but follow your passion.
Mhm.
Just keep recognizing and tapping into what matters to you. You will find a way to turn that into a career.
I love it. I love it. It's something I need to hear all the time. Amazing.
It
Thank you
can
so
it can be really hard, and many times, I mean, kind of in line with that. It's funny because just yesterday, I think I was saying this to someone. I can't remember where I was having this conversation, but in alignment with that is we often in our society we often make young people, like I have a son who's a senior in high school, so I know he's getting this. And I remember when my daughter was at that age, she's about to graduate from college now. We often make people at these early stages of their career feel like they should have it all figured out.
Mhm.
What do you want to be when you grow up? What kind of job are you going to look for? And I mean, it comes from a genuine place of interest, not one to put pressure on someone. But it's important to also give the message, it's okay if you don't know. Like,
Mhm.
it's okay if you just know I'm passionate about public health. I don't know if that means I'm going to work for a Department of Public Health, if I'm going to go to graduate school, if I'm going to try and get a job at a foundation, if I'm going to become an entrepreneur, like it's okay to not know, but just to be aware of what you're passionate about and to recognize and be grateful if you are passionate about something, because some people can kind of be at a stage in their life where they're like, I don't really know what I care about, I'm not that passionate about. I mean,
Mhm.
just be, can we just let people be passionate and grateful that they have a passion and not have to have it all figured out?
I
So
love that. Amen. I love that.
good.
Okay. The next question is, what is your story? How did you get where you are now? So just like a timeline.
Okay, so we went over this a little bit, but I'll just repeat it so that you have it recorded in case you don't remember it from our previous conversation.
Perfect.
So normally I wouldn't repeat my story because I feel like I was boring you, but so I first got interested in research in my high school biology class because it was an honors biology class where it was up to us to create a research project, and we had flexibility to create that research project out in the community someplace, or any idea we came up with, we just had to check with our teacher, get it approved, and then move forward with some kind of an experiment. And I ended up talking to a family friend who was at our house one weekend, and she was a graduate student at our local university. We actually met her because we weren't as good friends with her, but she was good friends with a friend of ours. They were the same age, they were in the same class. And so these two women were at our house one weekend, and I was telling, her name's Carla, I was telling Carla about this honors biology assignment. And she goes, oh, why don't you just come out to my lab this week we can figure out an experiment for you to do in my lab. So here she has a master's degree. She didn't even have her master's degree yet. She was a master's student, master's level graduate student doing research in a lab. And I went out there and I had a blast. It was so cool, the things I learned. I mean, it just kind of made my brain go, wow, this is so fascinating. So then the next summer, because I had so much fun with that experience, I learned that there was a research opportunity at the university for high school girls. And so I applied for that. It was a summer program where you got matched with a lab for the summer. And I actually got matched to the same lab.
Oh, cool.
So that lab participated in this mentoring program for high school girls. And so I applied to the program, I got accepted, I got matched to the lab, and I got to keep working with Carla for the summer. And it was even a longer time period and a little more structured. Like you had to have a poster presentation at the end of the summer and so forth. So then at the end of the summer, I said, I have to pick a major for next year in college. I really like what we're doing. What do you call this? And she said, well, you should major in biochemistry, and here's why. And so she said, it's a good foundation for this and this and this. All I knew is I thought the world of Carla. I loved the work we'd been doing. Like I just found it so fascinating to learn all these research methods in the lab. So I majored in biochemistry, and I didn't really look back. Like I majored in biochemistry every time I had a hard class. I said, that's okay, because I know how much fun it is to do this kind of work. So that high school experience kind of gave me that research bug where I really appreciated what a career as a research scientist could be. So I kind of knew that's what I wanted to do, but I just didn't quite know what shape that would take.
Mhm.
I didn't really like the idea of going on and getting another degree in biochemistry, because as much as I thought it was fun to do research, the kind of research I was doing in and of itself wasn't that exciting to me. So then I took 2 years off after I got my biochemistry degree. I just applied for jobs. I found a job that was being advertised at a medical school in a different town from where I lived. And I applied for that one because I thought, it would give me a way to like earn my keep, make a living.
Mhm.
I'll give myself a couple years. But it appealed to me because it was in this town with a medical center. And I had this sense that I like to do research, but I can't quite figure out like the kind of research I was doing. As I said, the content area didn't really fire me up, but the ability to ask questions in that way had me excited. And the content area was like milk production and dairy cattle. I'm
Cool.
like, I don't really care about milk production and dairy
Mhm.
cattle, but I'd always had an interest in health, human health, different aspects of human health. So that's why I was drawn to apply to a job at a medical center, because I figured then I'm going to be around. This was long before we had, well, not long, long before we had internet, but it was before like going online was a way you could really find information. So I knew I needed to be in a place where people who were developing careers that were health related would be, and I could, you know, talk to people and ask questions and try and figure out a path. So that's why I applied for a job in another city, but at a university with a medical school. And I started doing that. Like I started just, looking at pamphlets and talking to people who ran different kinds of graduate programs. And so I was talking to people about careers as a physical therapist, a physician assistant, public health, but everything I read just didn't quite click, like something about it. I can remember when I read about public health, the impression I got from the brochure I read was that it was all epidemiology, and
Mm.
epidemiology didn't appeal to me, for example. I'd already decided that like a couple years earlier that I didn't want to go to medical school. So even things like physician assistant and so forth, that didn't appeal to me either. But then I came across descriptions of graduate programs in nutritional sciences. And I thought, oh, some of these people are doing that same kind of research that I was doing during my undergrad years. They're using those same kind of research methods, those tools, but they're applying it in a way that's like how to help people be healthier. Like, that's cool. I always thought nutrition was just being a dietitian And being a dietitian was designing meals for patients in a hospital, which I thought sounded dreadfully boring.
Hmm.
So when I realized nutritional science could be a research path, I thought maybe I should apply to a graduate program in nutritional sciences. So I started sending in applications. I was still a little bit like, well, I'm not quite sure. I'll apply to the master's program. And then if I like it, I can consider going on to get a PhD. But the first month I was on campus in the program that I ended up selecting, I got into a few different programs, and I just picked the one out of all the ones I had applied to. There was one that people had told me was one of the top 3 programs in the country. So it became a somewhat easy decision. I'm like, well, I got into this one that's supposed to be one of the best in the country. I'll go to that one.
Hmm.
So I get there, and within the first month, I was just like, wow, this is great. This is where I'm supposed to be. I love every minute of what I'm doing. I enjoyed my classes. I participated in various, like, they'd have a journal club group or a brown bag lunch and learn kind of experience. Like everything I was doing, it was fun and exciting and interesting. I just felt engaged and hungry to learn more and so forth. So that's kind of how I got into that PhD in nutritional sciences. And then as I progressed through my PhD, I started to take those very basic molecular biochemical research tools, and I started to learn other tools. If you think of research as a spectrum from basic science to um, clinical research to more applied things where it could either be in a clinic or in a community setting where you're taking the science and you're translating it, applying it at more of a impacting lives kind of level. I sort of crossed that spectrum with each one of my positions for several years in a row. So, my undergrad research was all basic science, doing research with DNA in cells, like hardly even animals involved, but just very molecular. As a grad student, I was using animal models, doing feeding studies and studying how that impacted various molecular mechanisms within the animal. So it was a whole animal system I was dealing with, still using those molecular techniques. But then as a postdoc fellow, I did my first human studies. So now I'm not just using a model for research, I'm using the actual things I want to help be healthier humans.
Hmm.
And, with humans, you can still use molecular techniques, but then you also need to understand some more clinical techniques. And then the behavioral piece starts to come in. And then those humans exist within communities. So then you need to start to understand the dynamics of those community settings that those humans work in. So as I progressed through my career, I got experience across that whole spectrum. And when I got the call from the recruiter that was hiring for this position that I'm in now in El Paso, it sounded like a very community public health position, but the way I came to that ability to see how to piece that whole big picture together was because I build these skill sets all along the way progressively. So at first I thought I'm not a good fit for this position. They need to
Hmm.
hire someone with a public health background. I've never even taken a public health course, but they must have seen something in how I talked. They wanted someone to come and build a center that would work to address obesity in the region, and that's the chronic disease that I had chosen to focus my career on. And they must have been able to see in the way I talked about what approach and strategy I would want to use, that that kind of path of all of those pieces together brought a unique perspective of how to do really important translational research that could integrate right into people's lives.
I
So that
love
was
that.
a long answer. Is that a good enough answer about
It's
my career?
amazing.
Okay,
I
good.
love it. Okay, next question is what does a day look like at your job? Just one day.
It can vary a lot. I mean, just from like an outside person, if you were like a fly on the wall, you'd see me in a lot of Zoom calls, phone calls, and other types of meetings and working on my computer a lot. But the nature of those interactions varies a lot. So, for example, just yesterday, my day looked like 9 o'clock a.m., a pitch to I call it a pitch because we've built some tools through our research that are now ready to be scaled at a larger level. And I'm working on talking with lots of different entities about these tools to get some partners who will be excited and engaged to collaborate with us so we can scale this up at a bigger level. So yesterday at 9 a.m. was a phone call with leaders from UT Systems, so University of Texas, the whole system level. So that's at the level where all the universities that are University of Texas something fall under that system. They're actually now thinking about doing a project where our software could be instrumental in running that project. And it's
That's
software that
awesome.
helps patients um, and healthcare providers address obesity. So, I mean, that was the 9 o'clock call.
Hmm.
And then, right after that, I touched base with my collaborator who was also on the call so we could talk about our strategy for next steps and how to follow up. And then I can't remember. I was probably dealing with projects and deadlines and a few other things going on in the next couple of hours. And then in the afternoon, we had a site visit from a pharmaceutical company called Eli Lilly. Because I've now opened a clinic within my research center, one of the goals or one of the drivers for opening that clinic was so that we could do clinical research. It's a good way to bring funding into the center. It diversifies what kind of funding we can qualify for. And one way you get clinical trial research going in your center, there are what's called investigator initiated projects. So that's me having an idea, writing a grant proposal, and getting that grant awarded. Sounds straightforward and simple, but on it depends on the funding mechanism and so forth, but it's not uncommon for someone in a position like mine, faculty at a university, to have about a 1 in 10 success rate. So writing grants, submitting them, it's pretty typical average that you get 1 out of 10 of those.
Wow, that's
So
crazy.
that's one way I could get a clinical research project started in my clinic. Another way is to be available and indicate to a company like Eli Lilly, which is a pharmaceutical company, that you would like to do clinical trials because they have trials that they will design from their end, and they need lots of different places around the country or around the world to enroll people in that study. So in that case, it's not me designing the study protocol and the research questions, but it's me running the research project as part of a large team of investigators at many different sites who would be part of this study. And to do that, I'm just now learning what that process is because I've never run a clinic before. So I've never been in a position to work with a pharmaceutical company. But I submitted my name when I was at a conference a few months ago. They reached out to me. The person who oversees the clinical trial sites in Texas reached out to me, scheduled a site visit. So that's how I spent my yesterday afternoon, was telling her about our center, her asking me and the rest of my team questions as kind of an evaluation to see if we were ready and qualified to be a clinical trial site, giving her a tour, that kind of thing. So that's an example of just yesterday.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, I love it. Okay. As a follow-up to that, what is your favorite and least favorite thing about your job?
My favorite is probably that I'm never bored.
It's awesome.
It's a job that by nature you need to be curious. And I
Mhm.
love to learn new things. I love to get to try new things. I love to be surrounded by people who are also curious, that kind of scientific mindset of curiosity and trying to figure out how to solve a challenge that faces humanity
Mhm.
in a way that nobody else has solved before is just fun and exciting. And knowing that what I do in my job is going to have a positive impact and has already had a positive impact on the world is really rewarding. So that's one thing that I love about my job. What I don't like about my job is you know, to do this kind of work, there's different types of settings that you can do it in. One that's very common is academia. So be a researcher within academia. None of them are perfect. None of the settings are perfect. But the downsides of being in academia is that you often get rewarded for what would I call it? Like the way you're evaluated and rewarded has more to do with what can seem like artificial
Mm,
indicators of success.
yeah, that makes
So
sense.
how many papers you publish and how many grant dollars you get. So you can be having a tremendous amount of impact with the work you're doing, but if it's not directly matched by publications and grant dollars, then you won't keep your job. So
Wow.
it can feel like a lot of pressure because, like I said, those, typical person in academia has to submit 10 grants to get one. And I need to have multiple grants in hand at any given time.
Yeah.
So it just means that there's a lot of a lot of pressure to be highly productive and the work never ends. Like there's never a day where I go home at the end of the day having finished what I needed to finish.
Hmm.
It's just like the concept doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
Um, I have a colleague, we kind of joke because I told him once that I I was talking to my mom and like on the phone on the weekend or something, and she asked a question, all meaning, saying, "Oh, well, did you get caught up at work this week?" It was like, I said to her, "Mom, I will never be caught up. Like literally until I retire or die, there will always be a to-do list that's longer than I will ever get to."
Yeah.
So that's it's easy to get sucked into that and it can feel stressful. So you just have to develop the skills to not let it weigh you down
Yeah.
and just sort of let it roll off of you and
Yeah.
acknowledge that there's always going to be emails you miss and deadlines that you can't meet, and you just got to take that in stride. You got to let go of perfectionism and keep in mind the big picture and the reason why you do what you do. So
Yeah. Never bored.
that's right.
That's awesome. Okay, I just have two more questions and then I gotta run to
Okay.
class. So the next one is how does your job affect your family life?
I think it can affect it both positively and negatively. I mean, on the positive side, I support my family. So I'm the one financially to support my family, and my job is stable and flexible. So I could work at home today. My parents are in town visiting, so it meant I could, walk downstairs and have lunch with them.
Mm,
My son needs a ride middle of the school day to get from one location to another, so I could run and take him where he needs to go. He has a track meet tomorrow. I can set my own hours and say, I mean, I still have tons of work to do, but if I want to take a break at 3 o'clock, because that's when he's running the 400, I'm going to go watch him run the 400. So
awesome.
that's a very positive part about it. Because it is high pressure, it's the kind of job, this level of professionalism is the kind of job you can't just shut off at 5 o'clock. I mean, there's going to be times where, having a partner at home to talk through, here's what happened today and it's really bothering me. That's the kind of thing you need, that kind of support in the people around you, the relationships around you, and so forth. So if your life doesn't lend itself to that, or if you're partnered with someone who expects that your job is your job and your personal life is your personal life, it's not always possible to just shut it off and then turn it on when you go back to work the next day.
Mhm.
There's other kinds of jobs in the world where you can do that, but this is not the kind of job, at least for me, that can be done that way. So that can be kind of challenging, but it's also just about finding the right people and support
Mhm.
network to build your life with. So,
Yeah, I love that. And my last question is, what has been your favorite project that you have been a part of?
oh man, I think just building this center and being able to create this really big picture vision of how to build a strategy to address obesity at a population level across all these sectors, working with healthcare providers and employers and school districts and parts of the food system, working on food system and the built environment. I mean, it's just so cool to me to get to work in such a diverse array of content areas, but knowing that to address something as challenging as obesity, that's what it takes, because all of those factors can come together and have an impact on one single individual and whether or not they can maintain a healthy body weight. And that body weight then also indicates their risk for all kinds of diseases, all kinds of mental health states, whether or not they can get paid as much as a thinner person in a job. I mean, the social, the physical, the health, all these components interact together. And I just think it's really cool to get to be part of that bigger picture strategy.
That
And
is
I know you can do
awesome.
that, so I'm sorry for keeping you so long.
No, you're good. I mean, this is what school is about, right? It's about learning. This is more valuable. So thank you so much
Well,
for your time.
if you need more, you just let me know.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much. And
Good
good luck
luck,
to your
Stacy.
son and his track meet tomorrow.
Oh, thank you so much. We'll talk to
All
you
right.
later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.